What do you teach officers when they're in a stressful situation? When they're getting triggered by maybe something suspect's saying or doing to maintain their cool? What are you teaching down in Memphis?
And so one of the things that we teach is, just pass it on to someone else. All right, because you can transfer that prisoner.
Tell me more about that.
And so,
okay, pass it on.
Yeah,
move the prisoner over to have somebody else transport it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
It's no need to stay there to make the situation. We're not gonna throw any more gas on this fire. And I get it. This guy's he's probably gonna be upset at the next officer, but at some point, he's gonna finally get to where he needs to get to if we all act in a professional manner. And so that's one of the things that we have to focus on is using de-escalation. Is we have to make sure that we are saying the right things and doing the right things. At the end of the day, you want to have a professional police department, and it's hard.
San Diego 911 emergency. You need to come right away. There's a man with a gun and it's loaded. Receiving emergency signal from
4 Charge 1141. We've got a white team out there. We need paramedics code 3.
all available units. Roll code that way.
Welcome to the De-Escalation Conversations Podcast. With me today is, wait a second, before I even introduce this awesome guy, let's talk about where we're at. We're in Indianapolis, Indiana at the Crisis Intervention Team International Conference. It is August 2024, and that's why we're got a different background than we normally have. 1,800 people from around the country, from around different parts of the world, not just the United States, have come here to Indianapolis to specifically have a conversation about de-escalation. And with me today is Nigel Payne from the Memphis Police Department, who started CIT in 1988, not 98, 88. That's like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And Nigel has blessed us with his time today. He's graced us and honored us with being able to share some of his wisdom, some of his insights. And so thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it. And I'm sure everyone that follows your channel, I'm sure they appreciate it also. So I'm glad to be here.
I guarantee you they're going to appreciate having you here.
Well,
so let's dive back a little bit and let's learn about Nigel a little bit. Tell me about, how did you end up becoming an officer, and where were you born? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in Memphis, or rural Shelby County. So not necessarily the city of Memphis, a small town in Rosemark, Tennessee, which is inside of Shelby County. And we have about 16 acres of land out in Rosemark, Tennessee. And so I got really involved in mental illness with my grandmother. My grandmother was diagnosed with schizophrenia. And I remember an officer coming out, we had a situation, and he used de-escalation to get an axe out of my grandmother's hand.
An axe?
Yes.
Like a hatchet,
Yeah, she was having a hallucination. And so those are some of the symptoms of schizophrenia. And so he used de-escalation. He de-escalated the situation. And now looking backward at it, I learned that, there was an opportunity that, someone armed with something the deadly force could have been used, but instead he used words. So de-escalation became something really important for me. And so, moving forward in life, I went to University of Memphis. I ran across this great guy, right? And he was my instructor. And this great guy was Major Sam Cochran. And I was like, oh man, kind of cheesy class. I didn't, as a young kid, I didn't understand the value of it.
Do you remember the name of the class?
Maybe Policing in America, I believe it was.
All right. A cheesy class.
It was cheesy, right? But I wanted to be a Shelby County sheriff because I remember seeing that deputy help my grandmother.
Right.
And even every week I teach a class called mental illness at my police stations. And during the in-service training, I mentioned this story about how I ran into Sam Cochran, and I applied to be a Shelby County sheriff, and they didn't hire me.
Oh, they didn't?
They never hired me. And so so my wife was having our first kid, and I was a young college student, and I was like, man, I got to get out of college, right? I got to get out of college because I got to get a good job to provide for my family, right? And so I went to Sam Cochran or Major Cochran, and I said, hey, can you help me get on Memphis Police Department? And he did. He put in a good word for me. He was my reference, and they accepted me into the police department. And I told him, I said, if I since I got this job, if you give me an opportunity, I said, I promise you, I will. I owe you. He says, man, just join the crisis intervention team, and I did. So I joined. Wow. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would be the coordinator of this crisis intervention team. I've been on for 13 years. I've been the coordinator for 2 years, and so of those 13 years, I've been a CIT officer for 12. You have to do 1 year on probation. After probation, you can go and join the crisis intervention team. It is a really awesome job. I'm thankful for it. And with that being said, I get to teach other officers how to de-escalate. And de-escalation it is the key of law enforcement. Let me tell it. I really do believe that every situation can be solved by verbalization. At its peak. And I think that it's just something that we have to dive into. So I want to spread that. I want to spread the importance of why de-escalation works. And I think that Memphis having so many issues, people look at our crime statistics, people look at things that occur in Memphis. But if we talk de-escalation, I think that we would be in a better place. I really honestly do, if people understood things. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that, right? I have seen a Facebook like turn into a homicide. And it's weird. You're like, what? People don't believe that, but social media drives some people to murder. And what I mean by that is, you didn't like something I posted, or you said something, or you made a reaction to something that I posted. Now I'm upset at you. Now we're fighting. Now that fight has turned into me shooting. And now, maybe I didn't kill you, but now somebody in my family will. When all we had to do was de-escalate from this situation,
over a social media
post. De-escalation is important. When is it enough to say, hey, you know what, it wasn't that big. It wasn't that big of a deal. I'm sorry. I apologize. And so once you have those, once you bring that de-escalation, when you bring that de-escalation into the arena of a bad situation, I think you can solve it. I really honestly do.
So we teach at IDEA, and anybody that's been around us for about 3.5 milliseconds knows what we teach at IDEA is neuroscience, personality science, core human drivers, knowing how your brain works, how their brain works, the words that they can best hear, and then what's motivating. That's our 3 pillars of our training. And so when you talk about someone being able to go, you know what, wasn't that big of a deal, I apologize. We start looking at the opposites of ego and self-esteem.
Right.
That takes a lot of self-esteem, because ego keeps us from apologizing. Self-esteem is what allows us to apologize. And so as you look at that as a solution, what's some tips, hints, hacks, tricks that you can offer to people when they find themselves getting spun up tight because of something that they're reacting to, somebody else did to them, a perceived wrong? What do you teach officers to do to keep control of themselves out in the field, or what could anybody do?
And I think that this may be universal, but you have to think of the bigger picture. And so that means when I get upset, I often think about, man, I got a family at home. You'll see me kind of tinkering with my ring kind of often. And it's just a reminder, like, hey, I got people at home who are depending on me to do the right thing all the time. Yeah. Somebody's depending on me to come home. Somebody's depending on me to pay the bills. If you're not in a position to lose all that, and I'm not in a position to lose all that, then I think I'm like, no, I better do what's right in this situation, or I may lose it. And so that's when the economics come into effect, I believe. For some people that may not have anything to lose, then that empathy part of it, maybe you don't want to de-escalate because I don't have anything to lose. And so you have to remind them that someone does care about them. Someone wants them to be all right. Someone wants to see them when they come home. And I tell officers that, I want you to go home the same way that you left. I don't care whether you're going home to. If you're going home to your pet rock or your pet fish, get back home the same way that you left. Sometimes it's easier to just let a situation go than to try to show someone And, empathy, tell them the truth. Tell them the truth from the beginning, but be calm, be respectful about the situation. If you're going to have to take that guy to jail, you're going to have to say, hey, I understand that you got something else going on, but this is what the law says. I'm going to give you an opportunity. Let me do my job. And then once I complete doing my job, then we can get those things that you wanted to get in order, making a phone call, getting something to drink or getting something to eat. I get it, you're hungry, you're upset, but you have to bring the human part of it in. I think that's what's important.
It's funny because I lost count of the number of people that I put into jail, and from the time I arrested them, I would do things like I'd ask them what their favorite radio station is.
Oh, absolutely.
Turn their favorite radio station, even if I hate that music.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know about you, but I grew up watching Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. I remember Bugs Bunny saying, music calms the savage beast, right?
Yeah.
So I got an upset prisoner in the backseat of my car. I'm putting on his favorite radio or her favorite radio station. It's something to show, hey, I'm not going to be a jerk about this. And I would tell him, I'm going to try and make this as easy as possible. It's not easy sitting back there
Right.
with handcuffs on. But like you say, getting them some water, taking them to the bathroom, even if they have to go 13 times. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes I got to go 13 times in the middle of the night, and I know what it's like. More than I'm older, but.
And you're right. And we teach the same thing inside of all of our specialized training too. Not just CIT. So we're talking about our FTO, our field training.
Yeah.
So we teach our field training officers because, we're dealing with different generations of officers. I've had older officers to train. I had very young officers just turned 21. This is their first real job or career. And so you brought up something that was real important about music. And I had this guy, man, and he could not, we had to write misdemeanor citations, and we were actually out physically writing them. And so when I read them, I was like, man, what are you writing? This is horrible. He's just like, man, I'm just a country guy, man. I enjoy listening to country music when I'm doing work. I was like, what? And I said, I tell you what. I said, let's turn on some country music. Not necessarily my genre of music. Don't get me wrong. It's not my interest, right? But this song, and it forever sticks in my head. Great trainee, by the way. He turned out to be a really great officer. And it's 5 more minutes. I don't know who sings the song, but that's the only part of the song that I remember. Because every time I would tell him, like, man, hurry up, let's finish this misdemeanor citation. He said, I just need 5 more minutes. And it stuck in my head because he just said, he was singing a song, but he really did need more time writing the misdemeanor citation. But the music helped him get through the situation. Wasn't what I enjoyed listening to, but for 20 days, all right, man, 20 days, I sucked it up because he became a better officer.
And it's not 10 hours that 20 days. It's here and there.
Right. It's just here and there. He turned out to be a really great officer. I'm very proud of him. We still talk to this day. Officer Scott, he's a really good guy. And so, in situations like that, de-escalation, and you have to do it in every part of your life, though. You have to live it.
Let's talk about that.
You have to do it in every part of your life.
Tell me more about that.
And so even, hey, married, I have to go home and sometimes I have to say, all right, well, it's not a big deal. And I'll give you a prime example of that. So the other day, I'm about to travel to Indianapolis, and I said, oh man, I get my teeth cleaned and stuff, make sure I get all my dental stuff, because I won't be at home where all the stuff that I know, right? And so I go to the dentist, I get my teeth cleaned, the lady says, oh my God, you have 3 cavities. She says, you're gonna have to come back. They're on opposite sides, we can't numb your whole mouth. I said, oh, okay. All right. And so as I leave, the dentist, she says, oh, it's $100 for the cleaning. I said, all right. I didn't think anything of it. It's a new dentist. My wife had referred me to them. And so I went back and I got the 2 fillings, or the 3 fillings, it was 2 on each side. And she says, oh, well, we will accept your payment next time. So I come back the second time, or the third time, and he said, all right, man, it's $173. I said, all right. And so when I finally get home, my wife says, oh my God, that dentist is not in network.
Oh no.
And I was like, oh wow. But I said, you know what, they did such a great job, baby. It's not that big of a deal. You know, they're already paid. We already paid.
Right.
Well, this would have been free had we went to an in-network doctor. I just referred you there because they had really good reviews. I mean, it's not like I can go back and say, hey, you know, take all this stuff out.
Right.
You know, put all that plaque back on.
cavities back there.
Right. Drill some holes back in there. I'm going to in-network doctor. And so she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I know, we got kids going to private school this year. And she was like, oh, we just, there was money
Watching
wasted.
budget. And,
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, well, no need to be upset. It's all right. We're going to de-escalate from this. And that's part of de-escalation. It's no need to get upset.
Well,
The
it's the
money's
big
spent.
picture.
Yeah.
It's the big picture part of it.
Right.
And, sometimes, so one of the things I talk a lot about is intent versus impact. Now, intent matters,
Right.
but not in the moment.
Right.
Intent matters, that's more of a consistent, constant thing. Where is your heart at? Where are you coming from? Who are you as a person? But in the moment, it doesn't matter what your intent is if the impact that you have is hugely negative. And so when someone has that impact and it creates that initial, that fear response, Amy, our amygdala kicks off and our brain isn't working the way that we normally like it to be working.
Right.
We're in survival state. We're not in executive state like we are right now. What do you teach officers when they're in a stressful situation? When they're getting triggered by maybe something the suspect's saying or doing to maintain their cool? What are you teaching down in Memphis?
And so one of the things that we teach is, just pass it on. Pass it on to someone else. All right? Because you can transfer that prisoner.
Tell me more about that.
And so,
Okay, pass it on.
yeah.
Move the prisoner over, have
Yeah,
somebody else transport it.
Right.
Okay, yeah.
It's no need to stay there to make the situation. We're not going to throw any more gas on this fire. And I get it. This guy's he's probably going to be upset at the next officer, but at some point, he's going to finally get to where he needs to get to if we all act in a professional manner. And so that's one of the things that we have to focus on is using de-escalation. We have to make sure that we are saying the right things and doing the right things. At the end of the day, you want to have a professional police department. And it's hard. It's almost hard to say, in this day and time, because we see a lot of it. The media maybe feeds the inconsistencies of police departments and some of the bad things that they do. We have some guys out here doing some awesome work, not just CIT. We're talking about some great guys who are just out here just really doing some great work. And as a police officer, you got to understand that, hey, they're never going to invite you to the cookout because you're doing a great job. All right, you're never going to get a good attaboy party. But the minute you do something that's bad, it's going to be blasted across the news, and we understand that.
Yeah.
Some of our toughest critics call us every day. And the people that maybe love us or really do appreciate the hard work we do, they never use our services.
Right.
And so we have to understand that. And even in those same sayings, we have to be mindful and appreciative of both parties. And I tell anybody that I interact with, the crisis intervention team, we thrive on good commentary, negative commentary. We thrive on commentary. We want to know what we can do better. What did we do wrong? We want to hear from our customers both sides of it. Because if you tell me, hey, man, I didn't like that you stuttered, or maybe you mentioned this ADHD too much, or maybe you mentioned mental illness too much, or you didn't provide enough information, I got you. I want to make sure that we are providing the best service possible moving forward.
Yeah, tuck that in for the next time.
Right. Every day I wake up and I say, man, how can I be 1% better? What can I do to be 1% better? Because then it adds up. I don't wake up and try to be 50% better.
Right.
And I set goals, and I try to stick to them. Short-term, long-term goals. Try to make sure that we're meeting some forms of expectation every day. And I think that's important. Absolutely, that's important.
One of my favorite coaches, I've talked about him before on the show, Todd Durkin. You can follow him and find him at todddurkin.com. An amazing, amazing man. He was the one that I learned that from, 1% better every day.
Oh.
Because what do you got at the end of the year? It's not 365%.
Right.
Because it's compounded.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
you think it's just a little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit. And we can go either direction with that. We can get 1% better or 1% worse.
Right. I definitely agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you there. And so that's just something that I try to focus on. I try to teach everybody else, but also living by the model of leading by example. As a coordinator, administrator, I'm no better. I'm not in the rank structure of the Memphis Police Department, so I'm not like a supervisor. I'm just a administrator of the CIT program. So I crunch the numbers. But Monday through Friday, that is my primary job. But on the weekend, I work the weekends. I actually go out in the streets and I put on a uniform and I see what the officers who are inputting this data 40 hours a week or more are actually doing. And for them, they think that's awesome. For me, I think that it is a help on both sides. So if an officer, CIT officer, needs to take off, of course, I'm there to fill that spot for them.
That's awesome.
Also, the same thing with a field training officer, because I'm in a specialized unit. I can actually fill in for field training officers also. And so I'm always trying to figure out how can we be the best form of us. And that's the same thing in de-escalation. Every day I try to wake up and figure out how I can be the best form of me. And so when I say you have to transform that in every part of your life, that's what I mean. At work, you want to be the best form of the police department that's paying you. At home, you want to be the best form of you as possible. You want to live in your premium happiness, if you will. And that means that sometimes you have to de-escalate situations that would probably rather, make you upset.
So do you have any, because we're big on relationships, we have a relationships transformation course. We're always helping, because whatever you experience at home, you end up bringing to work with you,
right.
and vice versa. You bring that,
Right.
you can, if you're not intentional about it, bring that stuff home. Do you have any tips, tricks, hints for, okay, I had a rough day at work, whether I'm a firefighter, a medic, a police officer, K through 12 school teacher, because those are the 4 communities that we serve.
Right.
Any of those occupations, they can have a hard day at work.
Except firefighters.
Well, except
I'm just messing with you. My brother's a fireman,
yeah.
And so we always got to mess with them. But
Right.
I definitely agree, and they all run together.
So you're pulling up to the driveway, or you leave the station. You've changed. You're heading out, and you're heading home. It's been a hard day. Stuff has got you wound up tight. Maybe it's your supervisor. Maybe it's internal. Maybe it's peer to peer. Maybe it's supervisor subordinate. Could be the public. As you're heading home to your family, how do you prep for walking in that door to be the Nigel that they want to see, not necessarily the chewed up, worn down Nigel that's actually walking in the door, but who they want, dad and husband, that they want to see walking in? How do you make that transition?
And that's a very good question. My transition goes from talking on the phone. I usually call my wife because I don't want to get home and be that upset Nigel when I get there. I don't want the kids to hear all the badness that happens, at work. And so I may call on the phone and
On your way home.
Yeah, it may say, hey, horrible day, but I'm glad that it's over. And she may say, hey, well, I got your favorite food, or when you get home.
That's a good wife.
Right.
That's a good partner, man.
When you get home, it's all good. We just relax, and then when I get home, I have a daughter and a son, and my daughter she's really good at crocheting. Don't call it knitting for no reason, for any reason necessary. But she's an excellent crocheter, and so we sit and we talk about how our day was going or is going. And then my son, he is a little guy that is competitive, and so we play soccer a lot.
The two of you.
Yes. Oh my God, it's horrible that how competitive we go back and forth with playing soccer. But that's usually the cool down period, and of course we sit and we have dinner, and then we get prepared for the next day. The next day is going to be better. We're just thankful that it is the next day, because in my mind, and to answer your question, the direct answer to the question is, at least you survived the day, all right? Mm-hmm. It could be worse. It could have been worse. It could have been where I wasn't going home at all.
Right.
Or
you're going home with more holes in your body than you went to work with.
Exactly. And so I have to remind myself, I have to look at the brighter side of things. It could be worse. And so, I think that's in any profession. You mentioned firefighters, you mentioned teachers. And we obviously do not pay our teachers enough. I don't care what city or state
we don't.
what city or state you're in, is no way that we pay our educational staff enough. And everybody that we speak to, everybody at this conference has went through a teacher, to get to where they're at. And so we often invest money into other things and not into our educational system, which is very important. And I know we think, oh, well, I'll never use that algebra. I'll never need to know what the abbreviation for Indiana is, or Indianapolis. I never need to know what that is. All right, you may not need to know today, but it may come a time where you need to use those things. And so we have to be thankful and appreciative of all the hard work. They are our real first responders. I will give them that. I know I probably shouldn't say that on the podcast, should I?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna be honest. Yeah, they are our real first responders. They know people way before we have to deal with them, and that's just the truth of the matter.
They've been dealing with them and trying to correct situations before they even reach the backseat of our car.
Absolutely, and I wholehearily agree with that.
no tools.
No,
Like they don't got pepper spray, no tasers.
no.
Which is
some of them need it. Really, at this
some of it's
point,
probably a good thing they don't have tasers.
right? Yeah.
But
And my grandmother was a teacher for a long time, and that's what I really wanted to get into. But and I did. I was a teacher for like a year.
You're an FTO and you're a parent. You're teaching everywhere.
Right. I ended up leaving it alone because the pay was so bad, and I was having my first kid, and so I needed something that'd be at least something hourly, that's paid hourly. Most teachers, if I'm not mistaken, are salary paid. So.
Well, they never get their hourly pay. They're always working more hours than what
Oh,
they actually
absolutely.
get paid for anyway,
Absolutely.
with all the prep time.
They go
and-
home and they
building
lesson
out the
plan,
classrooms
they're grading papers,
Yeah.
and nothing can ever take that. Technology won't ever step in to take that away from them.
that personal touch.
Right.
That the kids truly need.
Right. Now we have influenced technology into education. I don't know if it has made it better, but we shall see in the next couple of years how things will turn out with the mix of technology with education. So we're looking forward to seeing it.
So if you had some advice to give some CIT coordinator, some de-escalation instructor somewhere who's maybe they don't have the CIT program per se, but they have some other de-escalation stuff, what ideas for handling suspects who are not mentally ill? You're not picking up that they're having schizophrenia, but it's still turning into a violent situation.
So I would say, verbalization. All right, let's all we're doing is buying time. Buying time is important. All right, buying time. That is what that's important. All right. And so when you talk about crisis response or crisis negotiation, all right, so I went through the FBI's negotiation class. Buying time is one of the most important elements that there is. And so allow them to go ahead and vent. I mean, yeah, it's annoying. You're gonna be frustrated, but eventually maybe they'll get tired enough to just say, all right, well, I'm gonna go along because I see that it's not gonna work. And don't get frustrated to the point that you're verbalizing it or they can see it. Just by the time, allow them to vent their frustration, but also stand firm with what you started with. If it's your agency's policy, if they put handcuffs in the back, explain it to them. If it's your agency's policy that they have to be arrested on a domestic violence case, explain it to them. Say, hey man, this is the policy of the police department. It's not something that I want to do. While we have discretion on things such as speeding tickets or someone who may be littering, a misdemeanor that is not committed in my presence, in these particular situations, I'm following the policy because I'm human too. I have a family at home also. And I want to get back to that family. I want to get you through this process. It's not the end of the world. You're probably not going to jail for a lifetime, but you need to get through this process. And so you have to use their words against them. So a bounce back redirect of what they are presenting. If they're saying, oh man, I can't go to jail, I'm gonna lose my job. Well, you may say, if we get you down there in time, maybe you can call in and let them know that you won't be able to make it tomorrow. You won't lose that job. Let's get you through this process so that you won't have to face so many other issues that you got going on. Or let me get you through this process so perhaps we can get you to a phone. I can let you use a phone where you can call someone and let them know what's going on. All right. We get it. People have bad moments. We don't necessarily have bad people. People have bad moments, they make bad decisions, and then we're there to either rectify the decision or bad moment and or change the direction of what happened in that particular situation. So we want to be the best version of our department moving forward.
Yeah. You mentioned something a moment ago that's really profound, which is we're buying time, because when they're on level 12, they've shot past 10.
Yeah.
That takes a tremendous amount of energy to maintain.
Yeah.
And so for someone to stay wrapped up tight, just where they're losing their mind, they're losing their mind. A very, very amazing person I know, her name's Dr. Joan Rosenberg. She wrote a book and she has what she calls Rosenberg Reset. And it was funny because when we talk about calming an angry person in 90 seconds or less, what they did not know is Dr. Joan Rosenberg was working on the Rosenberg Reset, which happens to be, you guessed it, 90 seconds is what she identified through the research for the typical pattern, almost if you visualize that bell curve of intensity, because the intense emotions take so much energy to maintain that they're going to drop off. And if you're able to buy that time, as you said, then you can start implementing some of the things that do work, that affect the mind in a positive way, calm that fear response.
I agree with you, because de-escalation, we'll look on the flip side of it. Let's say, for instance, that you didn't de-escalate. Let's say, for instance, that you met them at 12. You meet them at 12, right? And so now there's a fight, all right? And so now along with that fight comes additional paperwork, injuries. Now you got to take them to the hospital, which is more paperwork.
Uniform's torn, dirty, scuffed up, doesn't look as good. Leather gear's all screwed up.
There you go. And so instead of you saying, well, let me just take 90 seconds, let it blow over, right? You let that situation blow over. You listen to him. You say, well, I got you. I see what you're saying here. You may not want to say, I understand.
Right.
We try to
stay away from that.
Try to stay away from that. We know it's a term that is often used, but you don't want to get into the jam of you saying you understand something that you hadn't experienced, and so you humanize the person. You let that part, you let them be human, and after they get done, what we may consider a temper tantrum, right? After they get done with that, you say, all right, well, these are the next steps. Explain the process. Everybody wants to know the process that they're going through moving forward. And if you explain the process, sometimes explaining the process is the same thing as that de-escalation of, and this is where we're going from this point on.
Well, an analogy that I draw, that when you don't know when something's going to end, that's the worst part.
Right.
Like when we can look back at COVID, we can look at the shutdowns.
Right.
And we can go, okay, yeah, it was a long time. Yeah, it really sucked. But when we were in the middle of dealing with the pandemic, not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing when the shutdowns were going to end, if they were going to keep coming and going, if we were going to be able to buy toilet paper at some point, that was the worst part of it. Looking back, we go, okay, it was bad for, a year, 2 years, whatever it was, depending where in the country you were. But we can see that finite time that actually existed. You can look back, your high school years. There were times in high school you're like, I am never going to get out of here. College, I'm never going to get my degree. Yes. I'm never going to walk that stage and get my diploma. Now you look back at it and it probably seems like it went like that.
And I felt that same way when I was working in my master's degree program at Bethel. It was during COVID. I was like, well, not very much else to do. At least I can do this online.
It's not a bad time.
Right. It was a great time, right? And so I did. I was like, man, this is never going to end. Like, this is never going to happen. But going back to what you said initially, you were saying that it was like a roller coaster. And people feel a certain way when they know that it's going to end. And when you get on a roller coaster, for those who enjoy roller coasters, you see the turns, the twists, but at the end, like, you got this straightaway. All right, it's straight. We're finna stop, and it's over. And so I feel the same way about situations that are hyped up, when they're on that 12, all right, let them go through the motions. Let them go. But at some point, it has to come to an end, and we have to get them on another ride. And I think that is the idea behind it all. Is saying, hey, let's get you prepared to get on this other ride, man. You've expressed those emotions. You went up. You made some flips. You made some turns. Hey, we're back at the station. Let's get off. Let's get you to another ride so that you can get on the right path. So yeah, I think that you provided the idea behind it. Now I need to go somewhere and write it down, publish it.
So you ever go to Disney World?
Oh yeah.
Magic Mountain.
Yeah.
When you can't see the twists and the turns, you don't know what's going to happen. All of a sudden, you're just being jammed,
right.
and that's kind of like being in the middle of that. When is this going to end? Because you're not quite sure. If just enough light, sometimes you get a little bit of a hint where this might go, which is a lot like life. Life is like Magic Mountain.
It is.
Disney analogy for you, whether you like Disney or not. There's an analogy there.
Yeah, you may not like their prices.
Yes.
We've been a couple of times. Speaking of that, the next CIT conference will be in Anaheim, California.
Oh, there you go, right there at Disneyland.
Yeah, it is. So, you can spend money to come to the conference, and then you can go to Disney.
And spend some more money. Nigel, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
I have no doubt that our listeners and our watchers will get a lot out of getting to meet you today. And thank you for your service to the community and to the larger CIT organization as a speaker. So Nigel, one of the reasons I want to have him on the podcast is that he's speaking at the conference. His presentation was chosen from literally hundreds and hundreds that were submitted. So this is the man.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we did. We spoke today about CIT stat sheets, and I was working on actually sending out an email when I was like, man, it's time to go ahead and get on this awesome podcast. And so I'm glad to have an opportunity to come and speak, and I hope that that we can use some of the skills that your company teaches in Memphis moving forward. So we look forward to this great partnership moving forward.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
sir. All right.
Stay safe.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And to our listeners, as always, we have tons of things available for you at theidea.world. Come check us out. We've got advanced de-escalation training. We've got relationships training. We've got street racing training. We've got de-escalation for traffic stops training. We got a ton of stuff. Whether you're a school teacher, firefighter, a medic, or a police officer, we can help you out. Until next time, stay safe. You found a lot of great value in this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. Please be sure to go to our website, theidea.world, THEIDEA.world. On that website, just click on the link that resonates with you most. If you're a K-12 educator, if you're a firefighter, medical services, law enforcement, flight attendants, whatever industry you're in, we have specialized training for you. So check that training out, because literally it can save your life, it can save your relationship, it can save your career. So check out theidea.world. And I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. This is Kerry Mensior, and thanks for watching this episode of the De-Escalation Conversations podcast. I hope you got some great insights that you can use right away. But don't stop here. Click that video link above and keep the momentum going with another powerful episode. And hey, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and the subscribe bell so you never miss an episode. New strategies, new stories, and new ways to connect coming your way every week. See you in the next episode.